Whoopi Goldberg is apologizing after repeating Holocaust remarks, saying it's white-on-white crime. Now, the recent incident happened during an interview with a British newspaper, and she said, "I tried to convey to the reporter what I had said and why, and attempted to recount that time. It was never my intention to appear as if I was doubling down." Also, Google is apologizing after its search engine results showed an offensive definition of Jews. Now, all of this anti-Semitic crime is on the rise. Both the FBI and NYPD collect and report on anti-Jewish hate crimes, but their data is limited. So Americans Against Anti-Semitism worked on a project, and their new hate crimes report shows 94% of anti-Jewish assaults in New York City from 2018 to 2022 were against Orthodox Jews. And get this, 97% were perpetrated by other minorities. But the issue is being ignored. So I want to bring in Rabbi Yaakov Menken, Managing Director for the Coalition for Jewish Values. Rabbi, thanks so much for being here. So there's so much to unpack here. I want to get right into it. Let's start with this report. So the FBI and NYPD not reporting the full picture, as I'm understanding, of hate crimes against Jews. What do you make of all of it?
Well, first of all, they cannot necessarily be expected to break down the Jewish community into its subsegments. And that's what Americans Against Anti-Semitism said we need to do, because visually apparent Jews are obviously more of a target than other members of the Jewish community who are not, as it were, wearing it on their sleeve. When you look like I do, with a black yarmulke and a black hat out in the street and a suit at all hours of the day, you obviously take on a different appearance, and you are projecting in the community, all the more so Hasidic people with their side curls and their long coats. It's very obvious that that's a Jewish person. Unsurprisingly, anti-Semites tend to target the Jews that they can recognize first. We didn't know to what extent, and that's what Americans Against Anti-Semitism has done for us, showing that 94% of the attacks are perpetrated against people who are obviously Jewish, and also, just as surprisingly, 97% are being perpetrated by minorities, while you still hear from entirely too many leftist circles, including the White House, trying to tie anti-Semitism to white supremacy. If it's about white supremacy, why are 97% of the attacks being committed by non-whites?
Yeah, that's very interesting. And, Biden has talked about white supremacy being this big problem in this nation. He's also talked about anti-Semitic violence. But if you look at the data, like, Jews are not being attacked by whites, as you just said. And then the White House, they actually had a meeting on anti-hate, and there was no representation from the Orthodox Jews, who are mainly the victims of these crimes, to even talk about it there, right?
That's right. The first anti-hate summit did not have any representation from those same visibly Orthodox Jews, who, again, are 94% of the people being attacked. And then you go to the second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, hosting a roundtable. And his roundtable, he only invited organizations. He did actually have some Orthodox organizations, but only the ones that specifically will not call out any sitting politician by name. Well, he also had a series of left-wing groups that are very happy to call out anti-Semites by name, as long as they're Republicans. Though folks who will talk about Kanye West and ignore the fact that Kanye West was a disciple of Louis Farrakhan for 10 years before turning Republican, that Farrakhan defends him, that Ilhan Omar is promoting it in Congress, and Black Hebrew Israelites are walking through New York proclaiming that they, and not the Jews, are the real Jews.
I've seen those videos. What do you make of Whoopi's latest remarks, and also Google in their latest definition calling Jews miserly or petty? How do they just overlook that?
There's really three distinct levels of anti-Semitism at work here. Google is, it was really not their fault, because they're getting it out of dictionaries. Hate to say it, I've had somebody talk about Jewing me down to my face. And obviously this was not an anti-Semitic person. He wasn't doing it to be insulting. I had somebody else recently use it on the phone, and then he was just a darling of a person in person when he purchased something from me. I was like, he said, "I'm not going to try to Jew you down on the price," is what he said to me when he saw my Craigslist listing. And, that's not intended to be offensive, but obviously for Google to its search engine, automatically the first definition of Jew that comes up is not the noun, but the offensive verb. I mean, obviously that's a problem. It's not on the same problem as Whoopi Goldberg being anti-Semitic, again, repeating her anti-Semitic tropes, claiming that it's not about race when Jews were singled out. Anti-Semitism was all about Jews being a subhuman race. And she can't get it, but she's also not infecting people. For infecting other people, you have to go to the New York Times and the fact that they've now run a dozen hit pieces against Hasidic Jews at a time of rising anti-Semitism. That's appalling.
Well,
that's uncalled for. The New York Times is way ahead of Whoopi Goldberg or Google.
Well, the unintentional swastika crossword puzzle, crickets. I don't hear mainstream media talking about it.
Well, that's because, again, kind of like Google, the New York Times could not have designed that swastika puzzle intentionally if they tried. They never would have imagined. What it was a revealing sign from God about what's really been going on at the New York Times. Because you don't run a dozen hit pieces and claim not to have anti-Semitic bias. Would they do that against any other minority? Would they do it against any other minority at the same time that minority was being hit with the majority of hate crimes in New York City? No, I don't think so. I don't think you can claim to read the New York Times, much less support the New York Times, much less work at the New York Times.
Rabbi,
and ask any questions how Der Stürmer became popular in Germany.
I got to ask you this. Netanyahu now back in power. You have people protesting his return, calling the cabinet the most right-wing government ever. Democracy is in danger. Your take?
Well, these are the folks who believe that democracy only works when the left wins. Remember some people in America talking about the resistance? We're going to resist this guy. That's exactly what they're saying in Israel. What really bothers them is that more than half of the members of Knesset in this new coalition are religious Jews. Think about that. The power of the religious community, it's not about power, actually. It's simple population, the voters. The voters of Israel, at this point, well, over a quarter of them, because over a half of the governing coalition, which is a 64 to 56 majority in the Knesset, that majority is now comprised more than half of religious Jews. And that's what's bothering them. These are folks who are obviously rebelling against the secular socialism that was Zionism and Israel's foundation. They're saying, we want to have more values in our community and more values in our society. These are the folks who have turned away from communism and socialism. It's a lesson that we could definitely afford to see here in America.
They also say that, gay rights are in jeopardy. There were protests in Israel. But then tell our viewers about Amir Ohana. He's the first openly gay Knesset speaker. They failed to ignore that? That's the
story right there. This supposedly bigoted, anti-gay government immediately placed the first openly gay person in control of a national government entity at the head of it. The new Knesset speaker is an openly gay man, and one of the first people to run over and congratulate him with a warm handshake was the head of the United Torah Judaism Party. So think about that. It's all about openness and tolerance and treating him like a human being like everybody else, but not placing the gay agenda ahead of the rights of everybody else. That's the balance that they're trying to strive for, and that, to the left, they can't have that.
Well, I think before they come out and start judging this new government, we need to wait and see what happens. Rabbi Yaakov Menken, thank you so much as always. Happy New Year. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you so much. You too.
For all our viewers asking where One America News is heading in the future, we would like to introduce you to OAN Live. OAN Live is the best way to stay up to date on all of the hard-hitting, straight-shooting, national and international headlines. And the best part is, OAN Live is only $4.99 per month. All the credible, honest, unbiased reporting One America News offers at a fraction of the cost of cable. Just go to OANN.com to easily sign up for OAN Live and stay informed.